What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you guys with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Hello everybody, happy Saturday. I hope you're all doing well. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Over the weekend, I am on yet another business trip, and today has been particularly busy. I just got back to the hotel. Originally, I was not going to put an episode out because I haven't had the time to put together a full episode, but today is the first day of the so-called 2 sessions, and Premier Li Keqiang released a work report that, among other things, discusses China's growth target for this year, and this represents the lowest official growth target that Beijing has released since 1991. So I just wanted to put this quick episode up. It's a little bit shorter than usual, and it's a little bit more informal and a bit more disjointed. Hopefully you guys don't mind, but let's just dive in and go through some of this because it's quite important to discuss. So like I said, the big news from China today is that Beijing has set its lowest economic growth target in more than 30 years, yet another sign that the housing crisis, restrictive COVID controls, and global instability, among other factors, will continue to hurt Chinese economic outlook for this year. Today, this morning, Saturday morning Beijing time, at the official opening of the National People's Congress, part of the so-called 2 sessions, Liang Hui, Premier Li Keqiang announced that Beijing will target GDP growth of quote-unquote around 5.5% this year. We will look at what exactly this number means and how a China facing all sorts of economic issues can even reach it in a bit. The 2 sessions, Liang Hui, is an annual meeting of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, CPPCC, which is an advisory body, and the National People's Congress in Beijing. Many argue that the event is largely symbolic, bringing delegates from around the country to improve and announce national economic policies for the year. These include GDP growth, targets for unemployment, inflation, government spending, all this sort of stuff. We'll touch on some of these other points later. This year, the 2 sessions are set to last for about a week, so we'll be following it with regular episodes next week. Most economists predicted that the government would set a range of about 5 to 5.5%, so 5.5 is at the higher end of the estimations. Based on Premier Li's speech, we can also see that policymakers are aiming to narrow the budget deficit to around 2.8% of GDP this year, from last year's target of around 3.2%. They're also aiming to add more than 11 million urban jobs in 2022. Unemployment is a big issue, especially unemployment among young graduates. This is a theme that we've discussed a lot in previous videos, and we'll continue to discuss unemployment issues this year. The idea is they want to keep the surveyed urban unemployment rate under 5.5. Again, this is a bit of a kettle of fish with the unemployment numbers, but today let's just look at the GDP growth. And inflation, they want to keep it around 3%. Now this is all unsurprising, but worth touching on it at any rate. So we know that the Chinese economy was smashed in 2020 with the original pandemic, national lockdowns, months-long lockdown in Wuhan and the province Hubei around it, but there were also national lockdowns across the country. Then in early 2021, economic growth came back strong from a low base level. However, by the third quarter of last year, growth, particularly demand, which never really recovered. We looked at all sorts of metrics and proxies for demand. Demand never really recovered to pre-pandemic levels. These began rapidly slowing down, and the economy, of course, was hit real hard after the Evergrande Crisis was triggered. By the fourth quarter, the triple whammy of the housing crisis, COVID-19 outbreaks, and generally weak demand from shell-shocked households meant that local governments had to start front-loading infrastructure spending to maintain growth. None of these factors have improved in Q1 of this year. Indeed, the housing market looks only to be getting worse. We unpacked the February data for housing sales this week. We remember that sales collapsed by almost 50% among the top 100 developers in the country, and economists with Nomura said that the crisis is only going to get worse. On top of these issues, the outlook for China this year is further deteriorated even more with the spike in geopolitical tensions with the Russian invasion of the Ukraine, which has hit financial markets and commodity prices. By the way, let's just quickly touch on a few other highlights from the government report today. So about $578 billion worth of new special local government bonds will be sold this year. This is about the same as last year. The government said that it wants to stabilize land and home prices. Again, this is unsurprising. The government wants to keep prices stable but avoid a crisis while they also deleverage. This is an incredible balancing trick, one that I don't know whether they can pull off. They want to keep the RMB stable, and they want to set up a fund to ensure financial stability. So this is all boilerplate sort of stuff. JP Morgan Chase & Co economists expressed today that with a target of 5.5% GDP growth this year, it would require quote-unquote more accommodative macro policies. Now that's PC economist jargon for government credit and spending, that is more debt. Now, again, I'm sorry that this is a shorter and a bit more informal episode, but let me just leave you with some analysis from Professor Michael Pettis, China financial expert at Peking University in Beijing. He argues this afternoon, that Beijing has set such high targets, 5.5%, mainly because this is a politically important year and because of unemployment concerns. I agree with both these points. A lot of analysts doubt that they can achieve this rate of 5.5, but Pettis argues that Beijing still has the debt capacity to achieve GDP growth rates of over 6% if they wanted, expressing quotes, but this wouldn't be high quality growth, i.e. consumption, trade surplus, and business investment, which I suspect will contribute 3 to 4 percentage points of growth, much less than last year, but higher than average. The rest of the growth in economic activity, as always, will be generated by investment in property and infrastructure, much of which will not boost the economy's real capacity to produce goods and services in any meaningful way. End quote. The special purpose bond quota for local government spending and infrastructure was set at 3.65 trillion RMB. We said this above, the same as last year, and a little below the record of 3.75 trillion set in 2020, I believe, off memory. Now, to quote Pettis again, quote, to give a sense of how high this is, the quota was 2.15 trillion in 2019. Add other expected spending on local government infrastructure, expansion in the national rail and transportation systems, and a partial revival of the property sector, and China's debt to GDP this year will rise by at least 3 to 5 percentage points, and probably more. End quote. Hey guys, I'd love to hear what you thought about some of the updates we covered in today's episode, so throw your comments below. Always love hearing from you. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.